Great.
Are we
evening,
live
everyone.
streaming?
We are live streaming.
Okay, good.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Tamara DeRitter. I am the chair of Rose City Park Neighborhood Association, and I serve also as the co-chair for the Land Use and Transportation Committee. I welcome you to our special board meeting for the Rose City Park Neighborhood Association dated March 3rd, 2022. At this point, I would like to go around the room and have everyone introduce themselves. And I'll start with the board members. Jennifer, would you introduce yourself, please? Also, after you introduce yourself, put yourself back on mute. She's busy. Okay, I'll hand it over to Stephanie.
Stephanie Singer, I'm on the board and I'm on the safety committee, apparently,
Okay.
according to the list.
You don't have to have a picture if you don't want.
Yeah, I do. Pass it on to Terry.
Or it's just gonna call
Yeah,
on-
Terry Parker, I'm a board member. I'm on the Transportation and Land Use Committee and the rep to CNN for transportation, for their Transportation and Land Use Committee.
Okay.
How about Richard?
I'm Richard Crockett, treasurer. I'm on the Communications and Events Committee. Jennifer, can we try you again because we didn't hear you?
Jennifer Santhouse, I'm on the board as Secretary, Communications and Events Committee.
Okay, pass it on to another board member, Don.
Don Levine, Rose City Park Board Member, also on the Safety Committee, and I'm also the Rose City Park rep to the CNN.
Okay. Do we have any other board members present? Nope. Okay, let's go around the group here. And I think Barbara Jackson, you came in first.
Hi, this is Hal, my husband, Barbara Jackson. We live on 63rd and Brazil.
Thank you. Ben Joy.
Hi, Ben Joy, 64th, just off Sacramento.
I love going to Ohio State football games.
Okay, great. Nick Putnam.
Hi, my name's Nick. Neighbor, I live at 51st and Broadway.
Okay.
Building Legos with their daughter with cancer from prolonged exposure to burn fish.
Scott. Okay.
Biden on.
Zachary, would you please introduce yourself? And again, mute yourself if you're not speaking.
I can do some quoting of the State of the Union. I know some other folks watching, sounds like. My name is Zachary Lauritsen. Live here in the Neighborhood Association area, and I'm on the Land Use and Transportation Committee.
Thank you.
New ways of linking toxic exposure disease.
Go ahead and introduce yourself.
I'm Sharon Fuchs. I'm on the Land Use and Transportation Committee. I live 1 block west of 62nd and Sacramento.
Okay. Judy Potter-Zen, please.
I live on 64th, about a half a block from Sacramento.
Very good. Thank you. Susan Ferguson.
Yeah, Susan Ferguson at 62nd and Sacramento.
I'll pass it on to someone else who hasn't spoken yet. Susan.
I'll take it. I'm Jenny Lyman. I live at 63rd and Broadway, and I'm a member of the Land Use Transportation Committee.
Denise.
Hi, I'm Denise George, and I'm at 62nd and Brazil.
Good. Can we have Gary?
Gary Adams, 52nd off of Halsey.
Thank you. Sarah Brooks.
Hi, good evening. My name is Sarah Crooks. I live on Sacramento, just 3 houses from the intersection of 62nd and Sacramento. I also own a house on Sacramento between 62nd and 63rd where my mom lives. Thank you.
Excellent. And we have Aaron.
Good evening. My name is Aaron Soller. I live at 60th in Sacramento.
Okay, you're a little bit garbly there. Can you get a better, better connection?
Come down, you can be on the meeting. This is Aaron. I think we're hearing somebody else in the background, but I live at Northeast 60th in Sacramento, that area.
Okay, thank you. Then we have Peter Canopy.
Yes, hello, my name's Peter. I live on 62nd and Hancock. I missed the beginning. Is that all we're doing? Name and where we live?
That's right. That's where we're at.
Sweet, thanks.
And Nicholas Phone.
Hi, everyone. This is Nick Gross. I live at Halsey and 53rd, and I'm listening in as a neighbor. Thanks.
Okay. Did we get everyone?
Bob.
Richard?
Bob has not told us.
Bob, please. Introduce yourself, please.
I'm Bob Black. I live at 6108 Northeast Sacramento, and I'm about a block from the intersection.
And I'm Gail Black, same address.
Wonderful. Great to have you. Okay. Have we missed anyone yet? Yes, Michelle, sorry.
Yeah, I'm Michelle Bounds, and I live right at the intersection of 62nd and Sacramento. I look down on that intersection.
Wow. Okay. Good to have you here.
Thank you.
All right. At this point, I will begin our meeting by reading the land acknowledgement statement we have. And if I can share the screen here, you guys can see it as well. I can see my cursor. This is just high tech, isn't it? This is so high tech. Uh-oh, host disabled my participant screen sharing. Can you give me ability to do that again? Yeah,
Let me
I'm
see.
still disabled.
Camera. Let me see.
I'll go ahead and just start reading. It's still disabled. I'll just go ahead and start reading. You guys don't have to see it.
I made you co-host.
Okay, well. Oh, there, hey, I can see my stuff. All right, there you go. All right. This is the land acknowledgement statement that was approved by the board on November 2nd, 2021. And I'll go through it for you. As a neighborhood, we acknowledge the unceded land we occupy is the original inhabitants, including the Multnomah, Wasco, Cowlitz, Clackamas, Clackamas, bands of Chinook, Tualatin, Kalapuya, Molalla, and many other tribes who made their homes along the Columbia River. Currently united as the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde, the communities include over 30 tribes and bands from Western Oregon, Northern California, and Southwest Washington. We acknowledge that this land was seized through coercion, dishonesty, and brutality. We acknowledge the violent history of Euro-American settlement that sought to extinguish indigenous life from this land. We recognize the enduring influence of that history in our region and the nearly 70,000 Native people descended from over 380 tribes living here today. Many of the major roads in the Rose City Park neighborhood connect the Chinook villages between the three rivers, which the white colonizers named the Columbia, the Willamette, and the Sandy, instead of honoring the older names, such as Nichiwana, which means Great River, for the largest of the three. Rose City Park Neighborhood Association's mission statement is we work to build a safe, equitable, and healthy environment for all neighbors, present and future. Okay, then I will go to the next document. Sorry, I'm a little bit clumsy at this stuff. Neighborhood agreements. Okay, these are the neighborhood agreements by which we are to capture our interactions with one another to help make it helpful for everyone to have a voice. So in June 2021, the Rose City Park Neighborhood Association Board adopted these. We will take collective and individual ownership. We will center and prioritize the most marginalized voices. We will assume the best intentions and we will bring our best intentions. We will use ouch and oops to identify harms and to swiftly apologize in reply. We will take space and make space. We will listen for understanding and remain respectfully engaged. We will deal with the issues, not with the people. We will be willing to experience discomfort in difficult conversations. And we will expect that difficult issues will not be fixed quickly, but we'll continue our work to support and engage our neighborhood and related communities. Okay, at this time, I'd like to review the agenda with folks and see if there's any changes that need to be made. Currently, we have the welcome and introductions, which we've covered, and the land acknowledgement and neighborhood agreements. Then we have the Sacramento slow streets, and then we will recap and adjourn, hopefully by 9. I have one addition to make to this agenda. Board members, I would like to, for us to first hold a vote to welcome our new vice chair, who is Stephanie Singer, who's agreed to be the vice chair for Rose City Park Neighborhood Association at this meeting. So if that's okay for everyone, let's amend the agenda to add the vote. Can I hear a voice vote and hands?
This is Don Levine. I move to approve the amended agenda.
Do I have a second?
This is Richard Crockett. I will second that motion.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Okay, motion passes. Okay, at this point, I would like to tell the board that I am nominating Stephanie Singer as our new vice chair for the Rose City Park Neighborhood Association Board. Does anyone have questions of Stephanie? She's been on the board now for a while. Okay. So I would like to move to approve Stephanie Singer as our new vice chair. Do I hear a second?
Don Levine moves, or if it's been moved, Don Levine will second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? All opposed, same sign? Okay. All right. So at this point, I am going to turn the meeting over to Stephanie Singer and let her run the meeting, and I will represent the Rose City Park Land Use and Transportation Committee in my presentation to you. So Stephanie.
Thank you. Thank you for the vote of confidence. First, I'd like to just, RCPNA board members should be identified in their screen names. I think that our only slacker, as far as I can tell, is Don Levine. So that's Don Levine, he's on the board. And this matters because board members can't testify, but only board members can discuss when we get to the point of discussing motions. Okay. So I would like to ask Tamara to report from the Land Use and Transportation Committee, if you could present the material.
Okay. So, if I should share the screen or not. Okay, just to give you a quick summary, on January 20th of this year, the Land Use and Transportation Committee conducted our regular meeting on Zoom that included 6 committee members and 9 neighbors in attendance. And the primary topic was on Sacramento Slow Streets proposal by Portland Bureau of Transportation. And it proposes concrete speed barriers at the intersections of Northeast 62nd and 64th within the right-of-way. After much discussion and receiving minutes, or actually a batch of letters of testimony and the notes from the group discussion in December that wasn't quite we didn't have a quorum for that meeting. We went ahead and did vote. And at that meeting, we had 2 motions. The first motion was to encourage PBOT to install a crosswalk at Northeast 62nd and Sacramento, and that's at the stairway to Rose City Park, and to install traffic calming concrete bollard or planters as designed by the city engineers. And that motion passed 3-2. The second motion was have PBOT combine the 2 projects, which is a slow street and safe routes to schools at Northeast 64th and Brazil, to come up with a more aesthetically pleasing solution that preserves the view to Mount Hood corridor, which is at that intersection recognized by the city. And Rose City Park Neighborhood Association will form a subcommittee to come up with a suggested design that is acceptable to the neighborhood. That motion passed 4-1. So this is the recommendation to the board at this point by the Land Use and Transportation Committee. We did have a follow-up meeting on February 17th. At that meeting of the Land Use and Transportation Committee, it was brought back up that there was a request for a revote of the January vote on slow streets, and that was turned down. But the recommendation that the reasoning for that was to split the items up into 3 items instead of being 2 items. So my recommendation at this point is to go ahead and honor that and make the discussion around 3 items: the crosswalk. The second one is a concrete bollard and planters at 62nd. And the third one is the 64th intersection with all of the safe routes to school and the concrete bollards. So at this point, I would entertain any questions you might have about the report. There's lots of documents, and it will be up to you how you want to handle this. And I think Stephanie and I have spoken about this in such a way that we don't have to make a decision tonight. We can leave the record open for more information to come in and for people to have more of a time to review the material and come back at another time and make the final decision. But it is up to you tonight, and I'm here as your resource. I do have one additional exhibit to add, and this came up through our discussion, my discussion with Zachary today. And that is a document. Let me see if I can find it. Sorry. Sign up. Oh, of course. It is. Share the screen again. Excuse me. Pop this in. This is a review of the intersection at 62nd. The question was whether or not 12 parking spaces would be removed at that site. And in looking at the existing setbacks required by the city for intersections, that number actually is only 8 existing on-street parking spaces that would be forced to be removed at that intersection. And I went ahead and measured it out. You can see the length in feet. There's 39.8 feet on the southeast corner. And so that's 2 parking spaces there. On the northeast corner, that's again 2 parking spaces because that's 39 feet. Over on the west side, there's 2 parking spaces on the north side of Sacramento and only 1 parking space on the south side. There is 1 parking space also on the west side of 62nd that would be taken out. And those are the numbers that we came up instead of there being 12. And my report had said 12 because that was something that was mentioned. I'm not sure where. I think Scott had mentioned it, but we went ahead and measured it out. Are there any questions of this exhibit?
Tamara,
Yes.
I do have a question, not so much about parking, but looking at the exhibit. What is the width between the bollard or the concrete pipe or whatever you want to call it and the curb? Particularly, you don't have the exhibit up right now, but particularly on the going eastbound on Sacramento, that looks rather tight to me, which means that a car and a bicycle would not fit there together. And it may be the other way too. Again, I don't have the exhibit up now to see it, and I didn't print it. I printed a couple of things, but I didn't print that. So what is the width of the roadway between the bollard and the curb, or the concrete barrier, whatever you want to call it, and the curb, you could, the black spot there?
Yeah,
particularly looking towards the bluff, that looks awful narrow to me.
Well, all I can tell you is we do have the a scale, and it's 18-foot parking space here at the top. And so the idea is that you're looking at the parking spaces, so you're looking at the length. And actually, that looks to be about the width, this area right here. So I'm not sure. They say they have 37 feet located on the east end of the intersection and 29 feet at the width of the west end.
I'm not looking at the parking places. I'm looking at the black spot. And if you look down to the curb from the black spot, which is where the bollard would be, next to a marked crosswalk there, over to the curb that is in front of, on the bluff side, what is the width of the roadway between the bollard and the curb?
I don't have a measuring device, so I don't know.
Okay. It just looks narrow to me, and you couldn't pass a bicycle. A car couldn't pass a bicycle at that point. Is what I'm looking at.
Well, all I can say is it looks like it's in between 29 feet and 37 feet.
No. You're looking at the curb space. I'm not looking at the curb space.
I am looking at curb to curb, and it goes through that throat, and I don't have a measurement.
I'm looking at the measurement of the throat is what I'm concerned about.
I understand.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry. I guess I just didn't understand what you were trying to tell me, but that's my concern, that's an awful tight measurement. Anyway, we can go on.
Yeah, good. Well, good point. Thank you.
Aaron had his hand raised.
Yeah, just to address that concern. So if the car is going, it cannot navigate that gap without going into the other lane, the expectation is that the car yields to the pedestrian or the bicycle and allows them to pass. That is the idea of this engineered solution. That's why it's a safety device.
Thank you.
Good.
Don Levine also had his hand raised.
I'll leave it up to Stephanie to call on people.
Okay, thank you, Don Levine, board member, since I can't get it to read on my face. I'll just say now, I'm not a member of the LUTAC committee. This has come relatively recently to me in the last couple of days. And so I have tried to go back and do the homework and read the history, read the comments from the letters that were sent. So I just, what I would like to do, because I've read the concerns, I've read kind of the history, I'd like to submit this to you, Tamara, just for clarification, because in the latest correspondence between you and Scott Cohen with PBOT, he seemed to indicate to me, in my interpretation, he seemed to indicate a couple things, and I just wanted to clarify that, because that might, to me, it cleared up some of the concerns that were expressed in the letters. The first one, he seemed to say in his response to you is that PBOT can preserve parking on the north side of Brazil. So that is not an issue.
Actually, he's talking about a different design, and that was included in that letter. That's at the intersection of 64th.
Oh, okay.
And 64th, he gave an updated design with green planter bollards.
Okay.
That was in that
Just
letter.
on 64th or 62nd, because it
No.
seemed,
It was just 64th. And
okay.
some of the discussion was about 62nd, but the design that he proposed was just for 64th. And
So on 64th, when he references the planters, when he indicated that there would be no signs installed in the planters themselves, that they could be installed street side at the same height as the other signs, and that they could be painted yellow with glass beading, but that wasn't a requirement, that they could be left in their initial cut, their regular color, and there would just be 4 reflectors per planter. That refers to 64th
that would
planters?
apply to both 64th and 62nd as far as the design. So it
Okay,
would be a planter at this point, and then the sign would be at the side of the road next to the sidewalk.
great, but it would not be in the planters, which seem to be some of the concerns of people. The other, on 62nd, I thought that I read that he had included a bollard at 62nd in response to a concern from somebody that it wasn't part of the original plan, and the rationalization seemed to make sense, but that is not necessary, that they can just do a crosswalk and they do not need to include a 62nd Street bollard. Was that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and the last thing that I read is that the landscaped curb extension that was proposed by some of the neighbors in response to the design, PBOT couldn't do that because of budget constraints. But if neighbors express an interest, there could be some mechanism where neighbors could come together and provide the additional funding so that a landscaped curb extension could actually be done. Is my understanding correct in those things?
It is correct.
Okay.
Don,
Good.
I'm sorry. Can you clarify that last one? I missed that last one. You said I didn't understand what you're saying.
Oh, again, I'm new to this. I haven't been witness to all of the testimony, but it appeared from the question that some neighbors on one of the design plans had asked for a landscaped curb extension. And the response from Scott Cohen was that PBOT's budget does not can't allow for a landscape curb extension, but there is a mechanism where if a neighbor takes the primary lead, then other neighbors can go in with that original neighbor and provide the additional funding to provide that landscape curb extension.
Zach, that came from me. This is Ben Joy. That idea came from me, and it was comparing what they did on 42nd and Wisteria to what they did in our neighborhood. And the number that Scott threw out this time was $250,000, where it was closer to 100,000 before. So, you know, somewhere in there lies a real number.
Yeah, I certainly get that.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to understand that it's possible without going to a neighborhood improvement district or whatever that is. There's a mechanism that could be done without involving city and permits and lots of time if people wanted to go that route. Yeah, and that's all I got. I just wanted to clarify for myself. So thank you.
Michelle Bounds.
I'm just joining the meeting, of course, this time. I wasn't at the other meetings. I've had a chance to talk with neighbors about it, so I have a pretty good understanding of what's going on, but not a complete understanding. So I had a question about the design at 62nd and Sacramento. Was it designed by an engineer?
Yes,
And who was that?
the city engineer.
Okay.
I don't know his particular name, but that's.
Oh, well, it
that's the title.
answers it that it came from the city, so that's good.
Yeah, it was a PBOT engineer that designed it. And one of the challenges is those are, as was being highlighted, they're narrow streets. And to try and accommodate Amazon trucks and a lot of those commercial vehicles that we're all now used to, that really drove a lot of the width they needed to remove parking spaces.
And thank you. That it answers a few questions. I still don't think that it's a good design overall because it's a less than 90-degree turn. If you're driving south on 62nd Street and you have to turn left onto Sacramento Street, what the other gentleman was talking about having the concrete structure there, it's really not wide enough for a lot of larger vehicles. And I worry about the waste management trucks being able to get through there. It's very tight. And because they already have the design spray painted onto the roadway right there, you can already tell by vehicles going through there. And like I said, I look down directly onto that intersection. And I think that by putting a Ballard in there, you're going to create more accidents overall than that they don't exist right now. They're non-existent. There are no accidents in there.
So I'd like to, so we're going to have time for testimony and raising concerns like the one you just raised. Right now, I'd like us to focus on questions for Tamara about this proposal, and we'll get to the testimony shortly.
Okay, and I apologize. That's why I was saying I was coming into this a little later. I wasn't sure where in the process that we were. So thank you. Yeah, I have lots of questions.
Please ask, this is an appropriate time to ask questions about the proposal. So if you'd like to ask some questions, let me know.
Okay.
And then I see after that, Judy Potter Zen, and I don't see any other questions after that, but don't let me miss anybody. So Michelle, please.
Also, I wanted to know if there was some sort of an accident history that caused that intersection to be an area of concern.
Not that I know of. And anyone else on the land use committee, if you can chime in, I have not, he didn't say anything about accidents at that particular.
Why are they doing it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. That's my question too. I do not understand why this is happening. This is not a problem intersection. And if there's no history of any sort of accidents or concerns there, I do not know why we're putting all this money and time and effort into doing something, fixing something that doesn't need to be fixed. There's no problem.
Thanks. Judy Potter Zen, and then Sarah Crooks and Denise George. Do you have your hand up?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Judy. Judy, you are muted. Please unmute. Judy, we still can't hear you. Let's move to Sarah Crooks and
My question, Tamara, I've reviewed the materials that you submitted for this meeting, and I was present at the last meeting in February. And my question is the proposal that there would be both some type of barrier at 64th and at 62nd?
Yes, that is what is currently proposed.
And what is the rationale for having a barrier at both intersections?
Actually, the original rationale was just to create a permanent slow street at 64th as a bollard to slow people down and to allow pedestrians better visibility and possibly access to be able to cross the street to get to the park. And why they chose 64th, I don't know. They did not really specify why it was at that location. During the meeting in November, there was the point was raised by one of the members of the neighborhood saying, I would prefer it if it was moved to 62nd instead of to 64th. And then what Scott Cohen said from PBOT, he says, oh, well, we could have one at that intersection as well as 64th, you know? So now we're looking at two bollards instead of just one, based on that. And so that ended up with another letter that went out on December 8th to the neighbors. And that caused everybody very excitedly to meet in December and then again in January. And then the decision was recommended to the board. And so at this point, it's up to the board whether or not they want to accept what was recommended by the Land Use and Transportation Committee, or if they want to make some other recommendation at this point.
One follow-up question, just to make sure I understand.
Sure.
On Sacramento at the intersection with 64th, there have been for the past 2 years temporary signage that has local only access, correct? Is that the same general location?
That is
where the
exactly
bollard
what
is
we're talking
anticipated?
about. They're changing the slow streets that was temporary into a permanent slow street. And instead of saying local access only, they're going to have a 15-mile-an-hour limit sign. That's going to show.
Thank you for the clarifications.
You bet.
okay, Judy Potter Zinn, and after that, Denise George.
I wonder if there has been a study as to how busy 62nd is. I agree with Michelle 100%. It's not needed. I don't believe it's that busy that a concrete circle needs to be put in the middle of the street. Thank you.
Okay, are there any questions for me for clarification? And then everybody can testify.
Is there a study?
No, I have not seen the study.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Denise George, and then Ben Joy, and then Gail Black.
And I believe Susan Ferguson as well.
And then Susan Ferguson.
So my question is, has there been any kind of preliminary testing done as part of the engineering plan in facilitating big delivery trucks or emergency vehicles or anything to actually try to maneuver around that corner as they do, 10 to 12 times a day, either on garbage day or, we have a fair amount of elderly in this neighborhood, and it's not uncommon to see ambulances and fire trucks almost every week. So I'm curious to know, as a part of this structure planning, if testing is done to try to actually move an emergency vehicle through that corner safely.
I'm with you 100%. My understanding is that the city engineer anticipates emergency vehicles going through this intersection as designed. And that's why we depend on them to include all of that knowledge when they do a design like this. So at this point, I am trusting the city engineer to be correct. I don't know, I'm not an engineer myself.
Thank you.
You bet.
Okay, Ben Joy, then I see Gail Black, Susan Ferguson, and Jenny Lyman. And Aaron, did you have your hand up also?
I did, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to add a little bit of commentary to the why 62nd. Back in November, when we were talking to Scott Cohen on our meeting, there were discussions about having a walking path around the golf course, and it made little sense that these things were starting at 64th, when if you were going to walk around the golf course, you would come up the stairs, and so that made you think, why don't we have all of 62nd instead of 64th? The other thought when that idea was brought up was, if you look at 62nd, it goes straight through and has traffic light on 62nd. Whereas right now, if you go to 64th, there's all kinds of stop signs and there's no signal when you get to Sandy Boulevard. So it seemed like more of a natural thoroughfare. And as a discussion, we asked Scott, he said he would go look at it and then come back with the impact. And I think that impact was in his letter, December 8th, I think was that. And we had a pretty spirited discussion about it in December. And I apologize, I'm new to all this. It was very confusing to me. I thought it was done and we had decided to bypass this because of the impact of the neighbors on the corner. And so I apparently prioritized the January meeting wrong. I should have come to it because I thought it was a done deal that we weren't going to move forward with it. And PBOT, I spoke to Scott Cohen yesterday, they could care less one way or the other, whether we have that thing at 62nd or not. So we still do have the capability to influence to not do that because of the impact of those to that intersection there. I brought the idea up, but I don't support it based on the design and the impact.
So again, I'd like to remind people that there will be time for testimony, and this is the time for questions about the presentation. So Ben, do you have a question?
No, I was just giving more color commentary. Thank you.
Thank you. Gail Black.
Okay, I have a clarification and then a question. So what I'm understanding is that now there will be a bollard, which is in a concrete barricade, placed at 62nd, a proposal, 62nd, 64th, and 70th on Sacramento. That's 8 blocks. And I understand that, looking at the diagram, that there will be another such barricade at 57th and Alameda, and then going all the way down to about 35th and Alameda, all along that ridge. My question is, are those neighbors and PBOT or whoever is requesting a concrete barrier every 5 or 6 blocks on their ridge? And part of that's in our part of it's in our neighborhood association.
Yes, it is. Actually, the concrete bollard being proposed at Alameda, and that's actually at Sandy Boulevard, has not been discussed yet. That's in the future. That's not part of the discussion tonight. So as far as I know, the diagram he has shown us is only one bollard. But there are some more bollards proposed outside of our neighborhood along Alameda. And that's just beyond our boundary, which is 47.
Right. Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
That's all I know. Okay. And please take your hand down if you don't have it up for asking me questions at this point. Thanks.
Thanks for that, Tamara. Okay, Jenny Lyman and then Aaron, and have I missed anybody who still has a question? Susan Ferguson. Okay, thank you.
So I just wanted to, I don't know, you said this is just for questions, but I just wanted to respond to something a couple folks have brought up in regards to like the engineering, how these things are designed in terms of traffic movements of larger vehicles. So I don't know if I can talk about that. I'm a transportation engineer. So I just kind of wanted to explain, like there's.
Yeah, explanations and color is welcome. Thank you.
Okay, so you know there's pretty common standards for vehicles that move through the city, and you know engineers that are designing this type of thing would be familiar with that, and the widths and the radiuses and the turning movements will all be accounted for. You know, I'm confident in that. So that's it.
Okay, I'd like to add a little more color to the testimony that Don had discussed. If I could share my screen for you again, I will show you the information that we were talking about. It's actually in the emails. Let me see if I can open this guy up. Come on. Sorry. I'm having a hard time.
So Tamara, while you're working on that, let's hear from Aaron.
Yes.
Thank you. Question for the board. Is the board aware, and this goes back to the comment that we don't think it's needed, is the board aware that there is a record rate of speeding and pedestrian fatalities in the last 2 years in Portland, and it's concentrated mostly in Northeast Portland?
I have not.
And may I ask for clarification? Did you mean Northeast Portland is where most of the fatalities are, or is it Southeast Portland?
Most of the fatalities have been in Northeast Portland. But regardless, I mean, there is to the question of need. I mean, it's every other week there's an article in the paper of record, the Oregonian. There's a number of traffic studies and traffic and law enforcement studies that just, and this is a national problem, admittedly, but speeding is a problem. There's a record rate of fatalities. There's a record rate of crashes. It's it's a problem. I can't speak to whether there's been any problem at that specific intersection, but I think the board really needs to be aware of what's trying to be addressed here and the urgency behind it. And I'm hoping that those statistics are taken into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. For our records, for the notes, would you tell us your last name, please?
Last name is Zahler. Zahler.
Okay, thank you. Tamara, are you ready to?
Yes, I'll go ahead and share what I've got. It's not as much as I thought it would be. So I apologize about that.
And then after that, we'll hear from Susan Ferguson.
Here we go. You know, there. This is a photograph of the bollard design that is proposed. Again, it's would have a strip of reflection on it but it doesn't necessarily have the sign inside of it that's being proposed. And so just wanted to let you know that's what it kind of looks like. They're about 9 foot diameter, 8 or 9 foot in diameter. Okay, that's what I got.
Okay, Susan Ferguson, and then Barbara Jackson and Zachary Lauritsen.
I'm not asking a question, but I'm responding to a question. And that question had to do with accidents at the intersection of 62nd and Sacramento. There have been no accidents at that intersection in over 30 years.
Thank you. Barbara Jackson.
Go. Actually, it's Hal Jackson, Barbara's husband. My concern is the aesthetics. I think visual pollution has occurred here with this project. And I've lived here 37 years. And one of the reasons that we've really enjoyed living here is because of the beauty. So did anybody pay any attention to the aesthetics in designing this stuff with this big thing up on 70th and Sacramento? The car's gonna hit it. It's just a matter of time. And that's another issue of mine. Does anybody think about the safety of cars hitting those things? Because I believe it's going to happen. I've been running down that street, driving down the street, walking down the street 10,000 times in 37 years. No accidents, no problems with pedestrians, nothing.
So I think the question was, Harold, could you, the question was, has anyone considered the aesthetics and has anyone considered the safety?
Correct.
Thanks. Tamara, can you speak?
Can I respond to that just a little bit?
Please.
Stephanie, can I make a response to that? As far as the safety is concerned, the bollard at 92nd and Tillamook has already been hit and moved about a foot, and it's one of the big ones. I know it's not in our neighborhood, but it is a statistic. And secondly, the sign, and actually this is a question, why are the signs so high? Your headlights do not catch the signs at night. I have already noticed that. The signs are so high, your headlights do not reflect off the signs and you can't read them.
Okay.
So why are they so high?
Let me answer what I can about that. The signs are at the same height as the stop signs. It's a standard height that is required by the city. As far as the location of the bollards and the fact that they're getting hit, I think that is indicative of people not being aware of their surroundings as they're driving. And that's part of the problem of texting and driving at the same time. And that is probably one of the reasons for the increase in fatalities and injuries of pedestrians at this point, is because people are not focused on just driving, distracted. As far as why they chose 64th, I don't know. I don't see any reason why it has to be at 64th, or if it could be moved away from that view corridor, which is established by the city at that corner. As far as aesthetics, boy, we've been around the bush with that. And Ben can testify that we have talked about this till we're blue in the face, that they really look ugly. And, but there is the sense of, by much of the community, that safety is needed. Safety is paramount. And if we can go ahead and get something in place and then follow up and get it as planters or as curb extensions, let's do it that way. But the idea is that we don't want it to be ugly either. And so if it has to happen, if we need to have some safety, then let's go ahead and do that. But let's make sure that there's a follow-up and commit to that follow-up. And it may be a fundraising event, that we have to raise money for a curb extension, so it looks like what they put in at 33rd and a lot around Knott, all those areas where they did curb extension, paid for it. Well, why we have to come up with the money, I don't know. But if we have to do it, I'd rather do it and then make it a win-win than have it stay ugly. But safety is paramount too. So I'm all for making sure that the kiddos get across the street. You have schools nearby, you have pedestrians coming up from below daily and going back down daily to and from school. So all I can say is I hear you, Susan, that it doesn't seem like there's any accidents at 62nd. So maybe there aren't. Maybe the accidents are just slightly off one way or the other. I don't know why they chose where they chose. Again, Scott couldn't join us tonight, so I can't speak for him. But my commitment is that if we have to have the bollards put up for safety reasons, then let's, by golly, make it as pretty as it can possibly be, because this is a view corridor. The whole Sacramento is a view corridor as far as I'm concerned. So those are my thoughts.
Okay, Zachary Lauritsen and then Nick Putnam. And that's all I see for now, but raise your hand if.
You are missing the Blacks. The Blacks have had their hands up for quite a while.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I had called on them before. So, okay, Zachary Lauritsen, Nick Putnam, and then the Blacks.
Great, thanks. Hey, I want to circle way back around to Michelle's question at the very beginning, and Sharon and Jenny, who are also on the transportation committee, definitely jump in. But your question was around why 62nd, and so my understanding from the conversations from Scott Cohen from PBOT was this funding stream comes from the Safe Streets Initiative, and so that is a greenway that goes all along Sacramento. And he has funds to try and increase the safety, especially for children, and even more specifically for children going to and from school. And so if you're a student who lives in the southwestern part of the Roseway Heights Middle School catchment area, the direct route to school is to work over to Rose City Park, go up the stairs and cross the street right there. And so that's why when it was brought up by Ben, and Ben, correct me if I'm wrong here, I think it was in the December meeting, it might've been in the November meeting, he was able to go back and say, yes, that qualifies because that is a thoroughfare for middle school students making their way to and from school. So I'm hoping to try and answer your question, and I'm sorry it was so late in coming, but I wanted to circle back to it.
Thanks. Nick Putnam, then the Blacks, and the Jacksons. Do you have your hands up because you still have a question? Thanks. Nick.
I just sort of had a historical question. Do we know why some of these intersections are so oversized? Did they used to be like trolley turnarounds or something like that? Any idea? Okay.
Thanks. The Blacks, please.
Well, I am concerned about our conversation about using incomplete or statistics that are not founded, that are not presented, and people have, the gentleman said, all over Portland, there's Northeast Portland, we're having accidents are all over. Well, we can tell you that they're not here. So, it's probably in the middle of 82nd or Sandy at night in the rain. So I think we need to be very, very careful when we are considering putting more barriers in the middle of our streets. These are bollards, these are sticks. You're talking about putting a 10-foot barrier in the middle of streets for people to run into. And I'm really concerned that this group does not listen to suggestions that we have a high accident rate.
Thank you. Zachary, I see your hand up. Is that from before? All right. Is there anyone else with questions? Aaron, is that a new question?
I posted a link to an article that provides the statistics that were just being called into question.
Thank you. And I see Jennifer Sandhouse has posted in the chat that there was a traffic accident between 62nd and 61st on Sacramento in December or January. All right, any other, yes, Sharon Fuchs.
Yes, that was not technically a traffic accident in December. It was a drunk driver who, when the police knocked on him, had his foot on the gas. It was not a car-to-car accident. It wasn't a car pedestrian accident. It was a drunk who was there, and I would not classify that as any issue that you could technically call an accident, for which we are proposing a bollard for. The other comment Zach had mentioned about when Mr. Cohen came in November to talk, and we were talking about 62nd. I don't remember any discussion at any time him talking about school and safe routes to school and children coming up and crossing there. That was not the issue. It was more a question of where to begin the Slow Streets project. And it could be that maybe it could start another block to the east. That might help relieve that area at the intersection. And then also Nick mentioned why are those areas so large? I believe a trolley did come to the park when there was a horse racing track there. And there may very well at 64th have been a turnaround or something there. So good call.
I believe you're correct. I believe there was, the trolley did go along the ridge line there.
According to one of the people that is working on the Blackberry clearing, and they sent me an email because I had that question for them working with the golf course. The trolley came down 63rd, looped around and went back 64th or vice versa.
Okay.
So that may answer some of your questions. I actually thought it might have been on 62nd and it wasn't. And that's the reason I asked the question. But that was from some surveyor or somebody that really knows the history of the bluff and whatnot. And that was the answer I got. So maybe that'll help at least explain it a little bit.
Thanks. Susan Ferguson, then Michelle Bounds, then Zachary Lauritsen.
I've just got a quick clarification here. I want to verify what Sharon had to say about the accident between 61st and 62nd. I was home. I talked to the police and can verify exactly what she said. It was an inebriated driver who was sitting in his car. The police knocked on the window and he hit the gas and hit my neighbor's retaining wall.
Thanks. Michelle Bounds, then Zachary Lauritsen, then Jennifer Sandhouse.
And I was going to just add to that. I actually heard it and went outside right away when it happened. And it was not another car involved accident. It was just a single car accident with a drunk driver. And it was all his own doing. It could have happened anywhere. I did want to add though that again, I'm retired. I'm home on and off at different hours. I'm here. I was a school teacher. I don't see kids using this area as a major place to cross. I'm fully aware of where the schools are. My neighbors have, direct neighbors have children that go to both Rose City Park and Roseway Heights. And the previous neighbors had children that went to the same schools. And that's the kids going to and from school right here is not an issue. They either stay on one side of the street or the other. They don't cross if they come up the stairs. And we get a lot of traffic down by 57th and Sacramento down in that area. Anyway, just a clarification on the traffic and the need for this. You know, mostly what I see are dog walkers, bike riders, runners, walkers. Again, I want to just reiterate, I've never seen any issue with anyone out there in the time that I've lived here in 15 years. just like Susan and Roger, they look down in the same intersection.
Thank you. Thank you. Zachary. And just there was a question in the chat. There will be testimony shortly, as soon as we're done with the question period. So the more people can stick to questions in this period and testimony in the later, that is appreciated.
I think we can just open it up to testimony at this point.
Would you like, does anyone, okay. All right. Okay, so unless someone has some very specific technical questions, I think we'll move to testimony. Does Nick, Aaron, do you have very specific technical questions about the presentation, or?
Just testimony for me.
Okay, Aaron?
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to say that there's not a problem.
Okay, Aaron, I'm sorry, I'm going to stop you. That already sounds like testimony to me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So unless you have a specific question, we're going to move to the testimony. Thank you. All right. So, all right, we are going to have testimony. I want to reiterate something that Tamara said a little bit a while back. So there has been a lot of information that's come in the last day or two, including some letters that have come in from neighbors, which came in maybe too late for all of the board members to read them in time for this meeting. So after we take public testimony, we may choose to move forward on some of the issues that Tamara presented on behalf of the Land Use and Transportation Committee, or we may choose to leave the record open for another 2 weeks and postpone some or all of the decisions to our next regular meeting, which is on April 5th. So I just wanted to give people a heads up that that's what's going to happen after testimony. But we are going to take testimony now from the public, not from board members, just from the public. There is a 3-minute time limit, and people going over the time limit may be muted or ejected. I just want to take note of the time. It's 8:10, and we need to finish by 9 o'clock. So, all right, so anyone who would like to testify, please if you can raise your hand via Zoom, that's what's easiest for me, but also if you wave, and I will get to you in any case. So Aaron.
Thank you. So there is a problem, and it's visible anytime you walk on Sacramento. You don't have to wait for a car to exceed the speed limit going down that road. You don't have to wait to see a kid or somebody pushed to the margins of the road. And I think focusing on a specific intersection is not what the engineers are doing here. This is about a route. This is about a system, and putting in a crosswalk at 60th, which is actually where stairs descend to the park. I see plenty of people using it. I volunteer with the people who are removing blackberries on the slope, and I can tell you on a weekend, there's a lot of people crossing at that section, going down the stairs. And it's really, I think questioning the engineering, that's fine. I totally agree. In the land use committee, I said, I use the term brutalist to describe how these features look, and I would be completely willing to put in some money for a more attractive feature, or to volunteer to maintain the gardening or whatever. But we need something, and I will just end saying, and I just don't want to keep questioning the engineering or the studies. The city knows what they're doing. Portland has a good track record there. But I will just end by saying, in our mission statement that I heard earlier, we talk about marginalized people and giving them a voice. Here, we're literally talking about people on the margin of physical infrastructure, giving them some safety. And I think just it's important to keep that in mind. I know that there's visual impacts. I know there's parking impacts. Those need to be considered. And but still, we need that. This is about pedestrian safety, bicycle safety, And it's about a system. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Michelle Bounds.
Thank you. I actually had a quick question, but I will follow it up with some testimony. Have all the board members read the letters that were sent to the Land Use Committee?
I have. I think I see Don Levine raising his hand that he has. Tamara has. Terry, have you read them? And Richard?
I haven't read all of them. I've read some of them, but I have been at all of the meetings, so I kind of get the gist of what's going on. They came a little bit too late for me to get to all of them.
Richard?
Yes. I tried to respond, yes.
Thank you. Did I miss any board members?
Jennifer.
I read them.
Okay, thanks. And okay, so Michelle, you'd like to give some testimony?
I'm gonna keep it short and then I'll come back if I need to.
I should say it's one shot. So say what you want to say.
Oh, well. First of all, the route has already installed safety precautions along the way. It already has speed bumps. Putting in a crosswalk would be a good idea. I do firmly believe in a crosswalk if something has to be done. I do not support the concrete structure at all. I'm very, very frustrated with the removal of parking in front of my own home. I will no longer have parking in front of my house or around the corner, which is normal, that I could park in front of my house or on Sacramento in front of Merrill Schneider's house, which they're taking away all of his parking as well. Usually we can fit 2 cars in that space that's there. And on your map, it says that it's only a big enough space for 1 car. If you go further north on 62nd, there are driveways so that I can't even park adjacent to my house, so that I would have to park approximately a block away. And in my letter, I referenced that I have friends and family that are disabled and need to park as close as possible. And they would no longer be able to access my house in the manner in which they're used to, which is quite a problem because they visit often. So the parking is a huge structure. Okay. Thank you. And I also believe this is a view corridor from this point forward.
Thank you.
And it's not a crash corridor. It's a view corridor.
Thank you. Thank you. Susan Ferguson and then Judy Potter-Zen.
Thank you very much for recognizing me to speak tonight. And thank you to the board for listening with an open mind. First, I'm concerned because I submitted my testimony by the requested date and time, yet am unable to find all of that testimony on the rcpna.org website. I'm wondering if other testimony is missing. The process for this entire situation has been a bit of a debacle. As I outlined in my email, letters not shared, confused interpretation of the charter and bylaws, among other irregularities. How can you make an informed recommendation if you don't have all the testimony? But tonight, I have only this to add. When this all began, I expressed my opposition to any changes at 62nd and Sacramento, as there have been no accidents at this intersection in over 30 years. I suggested that the money spent on a crosswalk and industrial structure would be better spent in lower income areas, often described as crash corridors in outer southeast and northeast Portland. As of last Friday night, Portland has had 13 traffic fatalities so far in 2022, with 7 of those involving pedestrians. Last Friday night, on the 25th of February, a 35-year-old man was killed in a pedestrian crash at Southeast 114th and Foster Road. He was the father of a 1-year-old. PBOT's investments in traffic safety should be spent in these crash corridors. As Michelle said, Sacramento Street is a view corridor, not a crash corridor. In the interest of compromise and reaching a win-win resolution, I have supported the placement of a crosswalk at 62nd and Sacramento. The one additional thing that I'd like to add, in looking at a portland.gov website tonight, I found that there's a map of high crash corridors and sites for the top 30 high crash intersections. 21 of them are in Southeast, 7 are in Northeast. Thank you.
Thank you. Judy Potter-Zen, please.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank everyone for being here tonight. I just want to say that a crosswalk would be a change, and that would be fine. I don't believe anyone giving up their parking spaces it's just not necessary. And I have lived here for 55 years next door and where we are now, right around the corner from Sacramento, no accidents. Thank you.
Thank you. Peter Canepa, please.
So thanks, Stephanie. Hello, everyone. Thank you for showing up today and for having an open heart and open mind. I just want to reiterate some of the points that were already made about safety. As a father of 2 children, Susan, it's heartbreaking to hear that a pedestrian roughly my age, I'm a little older, unfortunately, was killed. And that's what I think the Safe Streets initiative and all these green spaces throughout the city are meant to do, is provide safe areas for pedestrians and cyclists. So some of the statistics we've heard about traffic fatalities in the US are valid. I read a statistic that per capita vehicle fatalities have increased about 17% in the last year. In Oregon, we're ahead of that trend with statewide fatalities up 22%. And this is between the period of sort of 2019 to 2020. Portland traffic deaths, I shared an article in the chat about this, are at their highest in 3 decades. I hear you that these are not happening at this location, but they're happening in our city, and they're a product of something that's going on with vehicles. So one indisputable way to reduce traffic deaths is to slow down traffic and to reduce the volume of traffic on the road. There's good data showing that reducing vehicle speeds, even from 30 to 20 miles per hour, which is the current posted speed limit on Sacramento, I believe, can reduce the likelihood of survival for a vehicle to pedestrian accident from 60 to 90%. So that's a 10 mile per hour decrease and a 30% increase that the pedestrian or cyclist who is struck will live. So if we can reduce that speed another 5 miles per hour, I would imagine we would see an increased likelihood of survival for any of these accidents. So I hear you that they haven't happened, but the point of speed limits and of reducing speed is to prevent them from ever happening. So we're discussing installing simple, maybe ugly, but simple signage and impediments to speeding and to reducing the volume of automotive vehicles on this road. I support that as a parent whose kids do walk to school along the ridge. So thank you for listening, and I appreciate the time.
Thank you. Sarah Crooks.
Thank you. I appreciate all the comments tonight, especially those made by Susan Ferguson a few minutes ago. My understanding from reviewing the PBOT website is that the slow street program is the rubric under which Mr. Cohen is suggesting that the bollard be placed. And when I looked and figured out what that program was about, it was started in May 2020, and they converted 100 miles of low traffic and neighborhood greenways into local access only, with the intention to restrict cut-through traffic and create space for Portlanders to walk, bike, roll, and stroll safely during the public health crisis of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, as the pandemic is, hopefully we're recovering, they are considering transitioning some slow street installations to include more permanent traffic control devices. And it must be on a neighborhood greenway. There's a separate initiative called a Safe Streets Initiative under PBOT's rubric. And as I understand it, it is also part of the COVID-19 response and is intended to provide space for people to enjoy walking outdoors and not as, unfortunately, focused on slowing traffic. I am not a traffic engineer. There are others who are more qualified to figure out how best to slow traffic. I don't think this bollard is the way to do it. I think that this is the wrong tool to address that issue. If we're going to participate in the slow street program, it seems to me that we've all gotten used to the local access only restrictions at 64th. That has made sense. And as somebody who drives up 60 or on Sacramento to get to my home between 61st and 62nd, Sacramento narrows in that space between 61st and 62nd. There's a curve, and people are going to be approaching that intersection in ways that are not the same as how they're going to approach the intersection at 64th. I support a crosswalk at that intersection. I cross that street 3 times a day sometimes with my dog or to visit my mother. So in my view, it spoke volumes when Ben Joy said, I made this suggestion, I retracted. PBOT doesn't care about this bollard. I don't know why we're talking about it tonight. Thank you.
Ben Joy, please.
Thank you. I want to clarify, first, I've been in the neighborhood 28 years. I grew up in Northeast Portland, but in this neighborhood for 28 years, raised both my boys here. They went to neighborhood schools. There's never been one accident. And any of these, when they went to Rose City Park, where my wife taught, when they went up to Madison, which is now McDaniels, and when they went to Roseway Heights, which any of that, that doesn't discount there's a problem that needs to be addressed. And Aaron, I didn't mean to discount what you were saying. I was questioning the data because I had not heard Northeast Portland was more, I had heard data along the lines of what Susan said. So thank you for that. And I apologize if that felt bad. One thing I've learned in this whole process is how you ask the question and how you answer the question. So I'll give you an example. At 64th, 4 homeowners, I believe, were asked what they thought about the traffic there and what they should do. And everybody said, yeah, let's slow it. They never got an example of what it was going to look like until the Sunday morning those teams showed up and started installing that stuff. And 3 out of 4 are horrified what it looks like. You got to ask for the solution before you say the answer, because there's many ways to solve a problem. That yellow paint was one way. There are other ways to solve it. Another example, people are saying they want this to close off 72nd up through the golf course. There's over 1,200 cars a day that come up through the golf course. People said they want to close it so the cars have to go around. That's 1,200 cars a day that are going to gridlock south of the golf course and going along the schools. So you have to make sure you ask the question and answer it correctly. I don't think the bollard on 62nd is the right solution for slowing down traffic. We do need to slow it down. I don't think that's going to do it. I support the the crosswalk. I'll have to live with the mess at 64th until we can figure something out. And I would not support the bollard. I don't think it's fair to the neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you. Nicholas Gross.
Thank you. I'm having some trouble with my camera, so hopefully you can all hear me fine. So first off, thanks for the opportunity to speak. I'll make it relatively quick. From what I've heard tonight, there's been a lot of emphasis on the lack of a crash history or the lack of accidents happening here. And unfortunately, or fortunately, luckily, there haven't been crashes, but unfortunately, too often we see a reactive approach to implementing safety countermeasures. And the typical scenario is someone is killed crossing the street or riding their bike, and then a week or two later, PBOC goes out and stripes a new crosswalk or some kind of enhanced crossing. And my fear is that this corridor, this route does have some safety concerns, and it would be really unfortunate for a crash to occur. Even though there haven't been crashes in the history of this street, I really hope that we could be more proactive in thinking about safety. My second comment is that someone earlier made a comment about the lack of activity at this crossing, not recognizing a lot of kids crossing. And I think that's probably because there may be parents that feel that crossing this at this location is unsafe. And that to me is also somewhat of a backwards approach to thinking about improvements on the street. If the street is not safe to cross or is not comfortable for kids to use, kids and parents aren't going to use it. And then lastly, I've attended several of the Land Use and Transportation Committee meetings this year, mostly this fall into the winter. There did seem to be consensus or relative consensus about a speeding issue on Sacramento Street. So I hope and am confident that this group can come up with a solution that will reduce traffic speeds on Sacramento. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicholas. And speaking of parents, I understand Ian Davey is taking care of children while being on this call. So Ian Davey, is this a good time for you to speak? Okay, well,
Hey, thanks. This is perfect. I literally just put the second one down. Can you hear me okay?
we can hear you.
Great. I'm gonna find a better place to sit. I just wanted to say I love this conversation because it's such a great example of balancing a ton of interests, right? Like I'm hearing about aesthetics and certainly how neighborhoods look, hearing about safety and a little bit about equity and the way that, you know, our cities work. So love the conversation. I think what I wanted to add is the perspective of a dad who throughout this call fed a couple kids, got them bathed and literally just got them in bed. But on the weekends and when it's light out, often is biking around the neighborhood with kids. And I have a 2 and a 3-year-old. So safety is pretty paramount for me. And, you know, often that is along Sacramento. And I know that not just at 62 and 64, but all along that strip, 72nd, for example, always trying to, you know, whether we're on, kids are in the back or whether I got the jogging stroller or whether they're biking along too, or even whether we're pulled over and they're like arguing about who gets the scooter versus the bike. I am always kind of doing one of those things where I'm holding them back from cars whizzing by. And I live a block off Alameda, which is similar in Sacramento in terms of being a through route to some extent. And I just know how fast people often take that. So, you know, when I think of balancing out all those interests, again, equity and aesthetics and making our cities work, for me, safety is really paramount. And I would just, in addition to the letter I submitted to the subcommittee, just urge everyone to keep that in mind as something where, you know, we don't want to become the statistic in our local neighborhood, and urge strong support. Thank you.
Thank you. The Jacksons.
Okay.
It's Hal Jackson again. And once again, I have traveled this street over the 37 years, thousands and thousands of times through running, walking, driving, no problems, and all times of the day, early in the morning, evening. So I don't have the safety concern. And it is good to be safe. I agree with that, but it's been safe for a long time. If we want to put 15-mile-an-hour street signs up, I would be okay with that. I don't like the plan. I think it's made our neighborhoods visual pollution to me. I don't like it. I think Susan brought up a good point. We should put the money where we're having the most dangerous streets, and they're not Sacramento. Make sidewalks in Southeast Portland, and we just don't need this here, is my feeling. So I'm also a parent who's had a child go through school, walking to school in the neighborhood. No problems. So that's my input.
Thank you. Barbara, would you like to speak also? No, I'm guessing not. Oh, yeah.
No, I did just want to say what I can't remember her name, I'm sorry, but the whole thing started because of the pandemic. And there was no problem before. Nobody said kids can't cross the street. Nobody said there was any of this stuff. And the whole idea was people were out because they were, you know, in the pandemic, and those signs went up, and that was great. So why now do we have to make that permanent? There was not a problem before. Why do we have to make it permanent now? I got it when we needed it. That was great. Time to take them down. And I just gotta say one more thing. That stuff on 64th with the yellow and the sticks is so ugly. Sorry. That's it.
I have one other thing. Sorry.
Thank you. Actually, we're
Okay.
going to give everyone a
Okay.
chance.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Felix, and could you please tell us your last name for the minutes?
Yes, my last name is Kirsting, Kersting. I live at, live on 62nd and Sacramento on the southeast corner. And I think a crosswalk is a really good idea. I totally agree with that idea. I've heard the barrier referred to as industrial, which I consider to be generous. It is an eyesore. We've had a lot of talk about safety, and I absolutely agree that we need things to be safe. But if you've driven westbound on Sacramento, you'll notice that there is a sign on the barrier at 70th that says the speed limit is 15. If you drive 15, you're the odd man out, but you'll also notice that none of the other speed limit signs have been changed to 15 miles an hour in the westbound direction. So it would certainly be a simple thing to convince the city that they need to change the speed limit signs to 15 miles an hour. And that would certainly encourage people to actually drive 15 miles an hour versus 20 miles an hour. And I personally don't have a problem with 15 miles an hour. I also agree with Susan. I think someone brought up the fact that we don't want to have a problem. I understand we don't want to have a problem, but there are places in the city with definite problems, and PBOT should be addressing those places first. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jenny Lyman?
Thanks. I just wanted to say that I'm in support of the traffic calming, particularly at 64th. I feel like the length of that crossing, I know folks are concerned about the aesthetics there, but the length of that crossing is exceedingly long. It's not a typical width that you'd cross a normal residential street because of the skewed angle of that the road that comes into Sacramento there. So I feel like I spend a ton of time on my feet, running along that road. And I feel like it's beneficial for the neighborhood. And then I support the one at 62nd as well, just because of the stairs coming up through the park. That's it.
Thank you. Sharon Fuchs?
Yes, I've lived at 61st in Sacramento for 37 years. I was the one that got the stop sign at 61st in Sacramento. I worked and lobbied for the speed bumps on Sacramento. And we wanted an extension of the speed bumps from where they originally ended to continue down Sacramento, which they now do, and to continue on Lower Sacramento, which they now do. And those speed bumps are to be taken at 15 miles per hour. So I agree with Felix, get the signage up. Sacramento is already a 15 mile per hour street based on the speed bumps. I live kind of around the curb. When the speed bumps went in, it dramatically changed not only the amount of traffic, but also the speed of the traffic. I support a sidewalk at 62nd. That's perfectly fine. It makes sense. Stairs, crossing the street, children, pedestrians, people going to the park for the concerts in the park. But there is absolutely no need for a bollard. Scott Cohen is not invested in this. He's willing to pull it. It was a remote idea, and that's all it was, by one neighbor who was putting out ideas at a meeting, and this can be ended. There is no need to push that. And I honestly feel that it's disingenuous for some to suggest that people who don't want a bollard there prefer aesthetics over safety. It's just not a safety issue, and that is really not a fair statement. Thanks.
Thank you. The Blacks? You are muted.
There we go. There we go. We support a crosswalk on the painted to connect the stairs in the park across the street. We see kids and families and dog walkers all the time navigating that across. And it's surprising that nobody has thought about putting a crosswalk in there, painted crosswalk in there before. And to kind of jump on what Sharon had said is that we've lived here 50 years in this neighborhood, and I know that all the stop signs that come in from onto Sacramento perpendicular at 61st and 62nd, those are really relatively new. I mean, as the history goes, and then of course the speed bumps. So we already are doing a lot to mitigate speed. I wonder if anybody has done any thing about putting speed strips in there to see just how fast or how much we've lowered the speed of traffic since we've had the safe streets. I think that would be interesting data to get. I think this whole, it's not a bollard, it's a big fat barricade that I'm worried about some kid running into that's skateboarding or biking. And I think that's a solution in search of a problem. And I think we've done a lot to mitigate speed, and we can do more. The engineers, my understanding is, never suggested anything at 62nd until an offhanded comment, oh, what about this? Which is good in a meeting, but evidently PBOT took it and ran with it, and evidently spent a lot of money to figure it out, to put all the plans on the sidewalk up there. And I don't see why we need a 6-foot tub of concrete to hold a sign. That's it.
Okay, any other Blacks to speak? Thank you. Gary, and if you could tell us your last name for the minutes.
Yes, this is Gary Adams. I'm well past having kids go to Roseway Heights or Gregory Heights at the time, but they went to both schools. I helped put in the bark chips and so on that path up there many, many years ago with other volunteers. And I use that corridor quite a bit and have friends in the neighborhood. But I think I do agree with others that have said that the money ought to go to where the problem is, and we ought not to waste our tax dollars on this. But one question comes to mind: who's going to maintain this thing when it's tagged? or bumped off its foundation. Is it going to be up to the neighbors, or is the city going to take that on? And how long will it take the city get those kinds of things fixed? I agree it might be an eyesore, but in any case, who can answer that question? Thank you.
Thank you. Zachary Lauritsen.
Hey, everybody. So I've mentioned before, I'm on the Land Use and Transportation Committee meeting, and I've been on a lot of these meetings having these conversations. And I really want to echo what Judy said, which was that it's awesome that there's so many people here. They're passionate, they're sharing their views. And I feel like it's a strong neighborhood to do that and see that and hear that. And I just want to say thank you to start. You know, during those meetings, I've heard a couple things. I had one person who lives on the corner there a couple months ago called the intersection of 62nd and Sacramento terrifying. That's a direct quote, because he would see kids excited to go to the park running down 62nd and running away from their parents, wanting to go swing or whatever it is, and they wouldn't be aware of cars. Another person in another meeting described people drag racing on Sacramento, and I've seen it myself on my bike and walking. And we've had many people talk about how there are a lot of people who use that street at high speeds. I think we've all seen it. We've seen the donuts in the streets and those types of things. And I think we also can all agree that we want to live on so slow streets. I mean, no one wants to live in a street where there's people flying by and they feel unsafe, or they think their dog's going to get run over, or whatever it happens to be. So there's a lot of common ground there. And you know, I think about how we eat well so that we prevent getting ill. We rest, or we brush our teeth so we don't have rotten teeth, or we exercise to be fit. And so it seems to me like what we would be doing here by putting in all of these installations would be doing just that, preventative. We'd be signaling to all of our neighbors in and outside of Rose City Park that this is a neighborhood street. We drive slowly here. Full stop. And unless we do the infrastructure to signal that, then we are abdicating our responsibility of safety. So I really want to suggest that you know, paint is cheap, but really putting something in the road that says we move slowly here signals to people who live all over Portland that are coming through our neighborhood, and we want you to move slowly with us too. And so I fully support and recognize some of the negatives, but fully support putting in all that we can to slow people down in our neighborhoods, and slow people down in a way that we've all acknowledged people are driving fast in the neighborhood. Thank you.
We could not all acknowledge that.
Thank you. Is there anyone who has not given testimony who would like to give testimony? So thank you to everybody for coming and for staying and for speaking. Okay, so I would like, at this point, it is 9:15. I would like to see if we can get anything passed tonight, if that's appropriate, and postpone anything we can't to the April 5th general, what is it called? A general meeting, standard meeting. Thank you. So I'd like to start. So I've put in the chat the three suggested, and these are just suggestions from the Land Use and Transportation Committee, 3 suggested motions. And I'd like to take a straw poll on the first one, which is the one about the crosswalk. It may be that we can actually pass this one tonight. So let's start with that one. If the board is minded to move it and second it. And let me read it. It says, encourage PBOT to install a crosswalk at Northeast 62nd and Sacramento at the stairway to Rose City Park.
I would like to make a motion to have that adopted by the board.
Great. Who was that?
Richard.
Thank you.
I will second that motion, but I'd like the word added, painted, to the crosswalk.
To install a painted crosswalk.
Yes.
Richard, would you move it with the word painted?
Since I don't know of any other kind, I guess I would.
Okay, so
thank you, Richard.
So it's been moved and seconded. Only members of the board can vote. And before we even take a vote, is there any discussion? Would anyone on the board like to say anything about this motion?
One thing that I'd like to say is because if we ask them to do that, it seems it is going to impact parking on Sacramento. My point about that is that Sacramento is a street. You do not have parking rights in front of your house. Come up here at 51st and Sandy and look at what has happened to us here in this area. We have no parking anymore because of that abomination that was put in by whoever, and it has no parking. So they're parking all over the neighborhood. Our narrow streets are, anyhow, you do not have parking rights on the streets. Sorry if that happens to you, but it's happening all over the city.
Stephanie, I'd like to follow up.
Yes, Terry.
It's not
And
going to take away as many parking spots as the Ballard is going to put in. And what I heard tonight from the people that testified is favorable for the crosswalk. I didn't really hear any negatives on the crosswalk. So
Agreed.
that's in part where I'm coming from, and I think the crosswalk is important. So
Thank you. Don Levine and then Tamara DeRitter.
I just wanted to say that based on both the testimony tonight and the written testimony that I read, it seems like the majority of people who responded to this question are in favor of the crosswalk. I think it's in the neighborhood's best interest, and so I'm supporting that.
Okay, thank you. Denise, is Denise on the board?
No.
Okay.
I have a comment.
Yes, Tamara.
Yeah, I would like to add to the motion in request that they put signage up indicating that there is a crosswalk coming up. Because you go around the curve going eastbound on Sacramento, you may not see it before you get on it. So I would want to make sure that there's at least signage going eastbound so people are aware of it. But I think in both directions would be nice as well.
Tamara, would you suggest, could you suggest language, exact language, so that we have an exact motion on the floor?
A sign that has a pedestrian crossing shown on it, you know, so they will see that there's a crosswalk coming up. They usually are in triangle format that usually says, you know,
Crosswalk ahead.
crosswalk. ahead.
But
Okay, so-
I think the motion says encourage. We have to rely upon the engineers to do what is appropriate. So that would be appropriate. And if they don't do it, then we can go back to them and say, hey, we'd like to see this put up. I do not want to change the motion.
Okay, let me just, if we are encouraging a painted crosswalk and appropriate signage, that would encourage the city to put in their standard signage for crosswalks. And I don't think that would make any sort of suggestion that the engineers and the people responsible for crosswalks would find offensive. Richard, would you support that friendly amendment?
Yes, I would.
Terry?
same here.
Pam?
Same here.
Okay, so let me just take a stab at saying it for you. Jennifer, I assume you're with your usual responsible and thoroughness are taking this down. Let's try this. Encourage PBOT to install a crosswalk at Northeast 62nd.
Painted crosswalk.
Painted crosswalk.
Thank you. Encourage PBOT to install a painted crosswalk at Northeast 62nd and Sacramento at the stairway to Rose City Park, comma, with appropriate signage.
Agreed.
Yep.
Great. Okay, any other discussion from members of the board? Tamara?
No, I just wanted to say all in favor, but that's yours.
No, Tamara, I am chairing this meeting. So for people who aren't on the board, we ask, well, for everyone, we ask board members to both say aye and to raise a hand so that we have verbal and visual signs.
Aye.
So, Richard Crockett, I'm not sure, you have a raised hand and I have not called for the
No,
vote
sorry.
yet, so.
Sorry. That's not the one I meant. I knew it comes up.
Okay,
That's the one I want.
but I guess since you made the motion, okay. So all in favor, please say aye and give away.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone. And it's 8 minutes left. Okay, so let's take a straw poll on the bollards at 62nd and Sacramento. So this is not binding. This is just to see whether we should maybe we need to postpone this anyway. So again, just the board, please straw poll if you think that we should vote on, if you, Tamara, help me out here. What's a straw poll exactly?
Just say, do you want to vote on the 62nd bollard tonight, or postpone that until we have reviewed more information in the record?
Okay, so all who would like to vote on this motion tonight on the board, raise your hand, say aye. All who would not like.
Question?
Yes.
Question?
Oh, sorry, there's this, yeah. Yes.
I'm just wondering if continuing this to our April meeting will cause any issues as far as the planning or continuation of the project goes. And if there's no problem with postponing it to the April meeting, then that would be my suggestion, that we postpone it until we have a full council and we have, again, the opportunity for everybody to participate.
And clarification, Tamara, we've had testimony tonight. I know that especially for parents with kids, it's hard to come to these meetings. Will we be taking additional testimony? Would we take additional testimony or simply have the vote in April?
My recommendation is that you would leave the record open for 2 weeks. And so identify a time and date specific to close the public record. And then we will just not take testimony at the meeting in April and just go ahead and have discussion amongst ourselves and make a vote.
Okay, so 2 weeks from today is March 15th. So I think what we're saying is that anyone from the neighborhood who would like to submit testimony, if they do so by March 15th and they send it, Jennifer, how do they submit it?
They submit it to info@rcpna.org.
So anyone who would like to submit testimony, please email it to info@rcpna.org. I'll type that in the chat.
And we'll just make it to the end of the day, so by 11:59 of that
PM.
day.
Yeah.
PM.
Okay, great.
Stephanie?
Yes, Terry.
Well, I mean, I agree with postponing it if it's not necessary tonight, but I did want to make one comment about it. And this is my feeling, that it is more of a safety hazard than it is a safe, because if someone crashes into it, the city is also liable. And I think that it has the potential of somebody crashing into it and being a hazard as opposed to actually promoting better safety. And I'm saying it tonight because I want the rest of the board members that haven't been a part of the conversation to hear that. We heard that from at least one individual tonight, but we didn't really hear it across the board. So anyway, that's the end of my comment for that. Sorry.
Okay, so and for the let's just take a little straw poll on the item number 3. Have PBOT combine the two projects, Slow Streets and Safe Routes to School, at Northeast 64th and Brazee to come up with a more aesthetically pleasing solution that preserves the view corridor to Mount Hood or otherwise known as Y East, the original name of that mountain. RCPNA will form a subcommittee to come up with a suggested design that is acceptable to the neighborhood. I'm just going to go with my gut here, and we have 4 minutes left. Does someone want to put a motion on the floor for this number 3?
I would move that we table both number 2 and 3 to the general meeting, the next general board meeting.
Okay, I think that was that Richard?
Yes, that was.
Yes, okay. Is
Second
there
that.
a second from Tamara? Any discussion?
Yeah, I think everybody is in favor of making it more aesthetic, but beyond that, I'm not quite sure. So that's probably a good idea.
Everybody is a very broad word.
And just, and just to clarify, this would be in companion with the holding the record open, public record open till March 15th at 11:59 p.m.
Yes.
And then have the record closed, and then the board has their discussion and makes a decision at their meeting on April 5th.
Correct.
Yeah. So I think Tamara, I don't think we need a motion to do that, do we?
Well, this we'll just postpone everything and
Yeah.
keep it encapsulated.
Yep. Okay. There's a question in the chat. If we testified verbally tonight, do we need to submit written testimony as well? Tamara, can you field that?
I think Jennifer will probably have it in the minutes by that meeting. I don't know. If you are unsure it will be in the minutes, go ahead and please type it up and send it, just to be on the safe side.
Yeah, even if it's just a brief, it doesn't have to, brief is good in written testimony. Okay, Jennifer.
I will just confirm that we are recording this meeting and we have live streamed it to YouTube, so it is publicly available. And I have recorded questions in the minutes, but not testimony, just the names of people that did provide that. So that will accompany what is written. And I will just kind of leave it there. I cannot type that fast.
Okay, so it is 1 minute to 9 o'clock. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
I would
moved.
happily entertain. So moved.
We didn't finish the motion.
I'm sorry. Do we do need a motion to postpone the others?
It was the agenda, so I think it has been
Okay.
moved and seconded, so we need to vote on it.
Can we
Okay,
vote on that
so
first?
okay, so sorry. Do I hear a motion to postpone the other two to the April 5th meeting?
Richard made the motion to table both 2 and 3.
Thank you.
And Tamara seconded the motion, so we just need a vote.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. The motion passes. Okay, and now I would happily entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Seconded.
We don't have to discuss, right?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
Thank you,
The
everyone.
meeting is adjourned. Thank you,
so
everyone.
much.
Thank you all for being here. That was a very nice meeting.
Thanks for
Very
the people
informative.
that testified. We appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Paul.
Thank you very much for coming and testifying.
Good
All right.
night.
Good night.
Night.
Right.
Come on.
Ugh.